you're wondering if your insurance agent is being honest, I'm going to give you the 8 ways that you can determine what are the parts of an insurance agent that you may need to look out for. So what are those red flags that kind of makes you wonder if you should be working with that agent or not. The first one isn't as big of an issue with some people, but it's that high pressure sales tactic. There's a lot of agencies and a lot of 800 numbers. When you call those and you fill out these quotes online and they sell your information, they know that they're competing heavily with other companies. So what they're going to do is they're going to try to get you on the phone, pressure you to purchase right then and there. I lived it. That was my life for the first 7 years of this industry. And I'm glad that it's pivoted to where I can help people more than just try to pitch them. Now, what happens is with those agents is they don't care anything about who you are, what you do, all of that. They're not asking qualifying questions that would make sure that this company is a better fit than this company. So be careful with that, because they may pressure you into purchasing something and lowering coverage to make the price that named price tool that you want, just to get you that quick deal and get you out the door. They make a quick commission. They don't care if you stay or go, because they're not really tied into the company as heavily as a typical agent that wants to build a community and build the relationships. Now, that's become more common lately in this industry. It's actually becoming more of a training for people, is how to get people to purchase on the first call and things like that. But if you notice that they aren't doing the right things towards you, then you probably have the wrong person that you're dealing with. That leads into the second piece, which is unrealistic expectations. Are they promising you more than what you would expect to get? Now, it's not always wrong, because there are times where I've written a policy, I gave this person this coverage, that coverage, sewer and drain, water backup, underground, refrigerator contents, their auto had this lower deductible, all of those pieces. But because I found the right fit for the person, they were hundreds, if not about, I think it was a couple thousand less. They were just overpaying. The company had raised the rates, they had gone through some claims and those fell off. All of that happened. So it was the perfect scenario. When I had the right company, it was almost unbelievable for them to purchase just because everything sounded too good to be true. Keep in mind, insurance policies come with exclusions. So don't expect to have everything under the sun that you want. That's where you want to understand the policy a lot more. And I'll link a video at the end that goes a little bit more in depth on what coverages for a policy for auto and home and the types of policies you would need. But you need to understand what coverages you're going to get and what you can expect to have, and have those realistic expectations involved. The third one, I unfortunately have seen this happen before, and it's unfortunate, and this is where the actual agent could get arrested and go to jail, is when they ask you for a direct payment. Now, direct payment meaning credit card or EFT, the routing account number of your account, that's fine. That's actually all day, every day. And to be honest with you, everyone half the time texts it now or sends it an email, even though it's not secure and it's not safe. I don't recommend it, but that's just the form of communication that we do. Shoot, my wife might even text me a picture of our credit card. I'll quickly delete it so that it's not on file. But those are the ways that we communicate. And when they're asking for either cash or some sort of odd payment, like a money order, or some way without the company requesting it, where it's the agent directly requesting it, then you got to be a little bit careful. It may be legitimate, but most times it's not, and they're just pocketing that premium. A year later, you realize that you've been paying for their car or their lavish lifestyle, and then they just skip town. It does happen. Those usually get caught, but you don't want to be the one falling into that trap for them to figure it out. The fourth one is the lack of credentials. Every insurance agent has to have a license. If you want to be extra careful, you can go on what's called DIFS, that's Department of Financial Services, and that's a website where you can look up all insurance agents. There's a licensing number, and it's called an NPN, a net producer. I think it's a network producer number is what it stands for. It's been 12 years since I've looked it up, but that number ties to that person. So you can look them up by name, you can look them up by their social, if you have their social, you can look them up by that NPN number and verify their licensing and their credentials that they are allowed to sell you that type of policy. The fifth one is surprise coverages. You may have an agreement to a certain coverage and a certain policy, and it might go through your mortgage, it might go through an escrow for your house, or you might go to make the payment and all of a sudden it's changed, or the coverages on your declarations page changed from the quote that they gave you. It's actually not uncommon, because when your policy renews, the company can change the coverages. They have to notify you. That's why you review your policy when it renews. So when the price goes up, that's something that I personally like to focus on, is let's go through your renewal and just look it over, see if there's any major changes that have popped up. And then I can explain it either went down or went up depending on X, Y, and Z. If it went up, then what happened? What changed? Did your insurance score change, or did they add a coverage that's part of their policy that you just can't remove? There's some standards that the insurance company has, and sometimes they switch those. Now that's the company. They have to notify you. You have to be aware of it. That's when you're already with them. Versus if you're purchasing a policy and you go to purchase it and they add additional coverages, that may be something that you want to consider. Okay, is this legit? Or am I happy just taking those extra coverages, especially if it's in the price range that you want to be in? Number 6 is the vagueness of claims handling. And this isn't really as big of an issue because a lot of agents, especially your 1-800 call centers and their do quotes online and all that stuff, they don't really know the claims process. I've been doing this 13 years. I've only directly handled a few claims. I just know from experience and working in the same environment as claims adjusters and people that handle those situations, and having friends and family that work in those departments, that's where I got the knowledge mostly from, and some research and whatnot. But in general, as a salesperson, when you're in that position, you're really focused on the sales part of it. So knowing the claims handling part is not going to be something that they're necessarily going to be knowledgeable of, but they should be able to get you the answer. That's more of not necessarily a lack of trust. It's more, are they willing to earn your business? By the way, if you are shopping for home or auto insurance, I'll put a link in the description below where you can do a quote with multiple companies without having to get a million phone calls. It goes directly to an agent, and that way you can work with someone locally, or at least in your state that's licensed there, that is able to help you and handle your situation. Otherwise, the 7th reason that your agent might be dishonest is their refusal to do multiple quotes. So if they're what's called an independent agent, it might be difficult for them and it might be overloaded and all of that, but if they really want your business, they need to check their options. Now, they're not going to go through every carrier because some companies have 25 plus carriers. When you're doing that quote, like in the description online, a lot of those guys, myself included, have the ability to shop multiple companies. So we're going to look at your Progressive, Nationwide, Allstate, Safeco, Liberty, all of those companies that are able to be appointed with. Sometimes they have AAA, sometimes they have Westfield and Wolverine and some of those sub companies. There's a lot of different companies that these agents can work with, but if they're not willing to take the time to shop it and actually compare it with you, they may not be the person that you want to work with anyways. If you combine that with the first reason, which is the pressure, so if they pressure you and they don't want to let you compare the quotes, that red flag is going to pop up right away. Don't get me wrong, if they work with 30 different companies and they think this is the best option for you and they explain the coverage more than they do the price, then they probably are actually trying to point out parts that make sense for you. Most of them are going to ask you to purchase. That's just part of going shopping. You're shopping for insurance, someone's going to ask you to buy. And if they don't, they're not doing their job correctly. Now, if they're trying to ask you to buy based on coverage, that's the agent I want to work with. Not necessarily buy because it's the cheapest thing they could find. In the 8th and easiest and probably the most powerful way to check, as long as it's legit, and I'll explain that here in a moment, is to check their online reviews. That has become the go-to, the number one thing for companies right now. If you search up the agency that you're getting a quote from, what are the reviews? Are they getting below a 3-star? Are they getting the 5-star reviews? For your larger companies, I like to throw the reviews out the window because most people go online to complain with the large companies. So if you're looking at State Farm and Allstate and Nationwide, and even Safeco's got really bad reviews out there, and the thing that people don't realize is some of those companies are ran by agencies. Safeco and some of Allstate's, they're run by different agents, and that agency might not be legit, so they might have bad reviews. That's why you try to find ones that are local to you to make sure if that agency, not so much the company, is a good fit. Now, the company does matter. If a company does get lower than 3-star, I'm going to start looking into it a little bit further and realize if this is a company I want to work with. Luckily, most of your networks, that's what agents are now, is their networks, and they join different companies, have some sort of restriction. So most of them only work with A-rated companies. That's the easy way to find out if you're working with kind of the legit companies, not necessarily the agency. If they state to you that they work with A or higher rated companies, that means they're stable. There's a good chance that they're paying claims correctly. That doesn't necessarily mean that, but there's a high chance that there's a better option. So your next step is to understand the coverages like we talked about, know what coverages you should carry and what you should have. If you're looking for car insurance and you want the Auto 101, it's going to go direct into what you typically would carry. I also have one for the homeowners insurance. Go ahead and check it out there. I'm Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.